everyone. How you doing today? My name is Sharon Combs with UCDI Leadership and Do Something Daily LLC. Tonight we're going to be talking more about leadership as we continue our conversation from Saturday. And what a great conversation it was. Not just the one we had out here, but also the one we had back in the green room. Just going over some of the real-time stories of being in leadership and sterile processing. And so without further ado, let's just jump right back where we were when we were talking about support. What does support look like in your department? What does support look like in your facility on the whole? What does support look like within the sterile processing field nationwide?
Well, hey, it's Lorraine Perkins with CS Assist. I think the term support is an action verb, right? It's an actionable item. It's not something that should be put on the shelf. So nationwide, we can talk about legislative support from our local officials. Many SPD hospitals that I visited in the country are not deemed a critical care unit. And why is that important, right? If you're deemed critical care, that means when resources are scarce, when budgetary time comes to divvy up the funds, those departments that are deemed critical gets first dibs. So I think it's important that SPD's officials or SPD professionals nationwide begin to petition, begin to inform and train and teach the local politicians and local leaders that write the laws about what we do. In this case, it starts from the top down. They really have no idea in full totality how impactful the sterile processing facility is, what the folks in SPD do, and how they do it.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, when there's a loaner tray that needs to go in for one of the cases, that's important to one case. If it's not processed, if it's not turned over, what happens? It delays everything. It delays the operations. It delays scheduling. It delays basically everyone awaits for SPD to basically push through this tray. And we as SPD professionals usually don't get that much attention or credit for what we do. Now during this COVID era, people are starting to see the spotlight is on us, how we've always been taking precautions and steps to ensure the safety not only of the employees within SPD, but the safety as well as the nurses and the doctors that manage and handle the instruments that go through our department. So it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and I strongly encourage everyone. What we're in the past we referred to as the people in the basement, the people downstairs, and some things that are a little less favorable. But anyway, if they didn't know who we were before, everyone was looking toward us during COVID as far as we were the department that were sterilizing the mask, right? So I encourage all leaders to take advantage of this opportunity. Once you start ramping back up, invite the C-suite in the department so they can understand what you need in order to be that effective leader within the sterile processing department to make sure that the patients are getting what they need as far as instruments, because where we have this big focus on the mask, we've had the same focus as Danny said with loaner instruments, not having enough instruments, not having enough equipment. So this is the time for us to really be empowered to make sure that we're set up for success.
Yeah, I would totally agree.
Definitely, Wayne, I like what you said, Ms. Sherry, and I know that you actually spoke to some of the lawmakers in February as an advocate for certification. And, again, because people don't really know what sterile processing does, and oftentimes they have an outdated perspective or an outdated viewpoint, worldview, shall we say, of what sterile processing does. When you were speaking with them, I'm sure you had to look that mindset in the face and yet still present a case that would allow them to be able to hear. And that's leadership. That right there is leadership. And so what are some of the things we do as leaders to keep our focus? I know we keep our focus on the patient, but what are some of the things we can do as leaders when we are leading a charge and when we're trying to share a perspective that maybe someone else doesn't have because they've had this perspective that hasn't really been challenged are closely looked at over years sometimes.
I feel like being a leader within SPD, it just encompasses so much. You have to be not only an operations manager, you have to be a strategic manager, you have to be an inventory manager, you have to keep so many things in mind, and not only stuff for your department, but again, like I said, stuff that's going on in the OR. You have to be mindful of what's being used, not only in the case that's going on now, but the cases that are going on 2 or 3, or at the end of the day. You have to be accountable for every single step of the way throughout your whole day. Typically, when it comes to leadership, you're just dealing with something that, well, I want to speak more supervisory daily tasks. You're dealing with something that's in front of you, an action item that has to be taken care of. But with SPD, being a leader with an SPD, you have to think about so many different things that you have to just be on top of. Just one minor slip up, if they don't even have one instrument within that case, it goes downhill from there pretty quick, as I'm sure many of us have experienced.
I'm so just fortunate to have gained the experience of being in multiple or a various amount of roles in SPD. The amount of tasks, the amount of on-the-spot thinking, forecasting, planning, delegatory. If you were to spell out every type of known management or leadership style, from laissez-faire to dictatorial, now we can go on and on. You have to be able to encompass each and every one of those styles as the work great, because you never know what to expect.
Right.
And in that unknown environment, the best we do, I see leaders are able to adapt. For instance, how do we adapt in SPD? We know Wednesdays in many hospitals, for some reason, it's Ortho Wednesday, right? Wednesdays, this is when some of the big dogs, our orthodontists who in many hospitals, they run the show. They're piling on cases, and you have to be able to meet that demand. So thinking, utilizing your resources at hand, understanding the negative impact if you drop the ball because you've been there, and marrying that with the positive impact. SPD leaders across the country are a special breed. I think the challenge here is they don't understand how special they are. If they can take those same life skills that they learn in SPD day to day and transcend it to something other challenges, they'll be superb. But they don't know how special they are.
And LaWayne, one of the things that I found, like you said, as far as going to different places, I think because so many leaders are fortunate enough to come up through the rank because they were great technicians, and then they are given the tools that they need to be successful leaders. And it's a challenge because they don't know. I was a great technician, and so they kind of go back to what they knew, and they aren't able to lead the staff, or they are in that that lead role, and they just kind of feel like they're hung out there. So I strongly recommend that when you transition from a technician to a leader, you encourage, if your organization is not putting you in classes, you encourage them to put you in some kind of leadership classes, or there's so much stuff that you can Google anymore, so many books that you can read. But, and as we talked about on Saturday, find a mentor, just don't get stuck, because you have to let go of the past in order to move forward into the future. So I encourage that as well.
Yeah, that's almost something hard to pretty much do sometimes, because like Mr. Perkins was saying, you have to wear so many hats that, 1 second you're being called into the OR to get yelled at over something that wasn't SPD's fault, because what do they usually point at first? It was Central Supply that didn't put the instrument. Meanwhile, the instrument that was never supposed to be there. And then the next second you're back in your department and you're trying to, rally up the team, boost up the morale. And then the next second you're in a meeting with nursing and the OR technician speaking about something else. It's just the multiple hats you have to wear. Luckily you have a strategic plan in place where you're not putting out fires day to day, but still it seems like something always comes up every day within sterile processing. So it keeps you on your toes.
Well, and I'm sorry, Sharon, not to paint things with a broad brush, but my experience, leaders who failed to come through the ranks, who failed to know what it is to be a technician, to be on the assembly line, to be in decontamination, to feel that temperature,
Right.
both figuratively and literally, that emotional temperature of a hospital. I think those folks make the best type of leaders. I think those folks truly understand what that inter and intra-departmental connectivity really means. So coming through that aspect, I've learned to treat all of my peers, whether I'm a technician or manager, as a customer. When you begin to treat everyone as a customer, you always put your best foot first.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Hey, Lila.
Hi. Sorry. I don't know what I missed, but when I was looking at this question, I thought a lot about the fact that I really don't envy anyone who is in leadership right now. Like, I just don't. I feel that you are set with a set of challenges that no one could have prepared you for. I don't know how many mentors you could have had, but no one gave me the foresight to go, in 2020, there's going to be a massive pandemic, and here you go out there and be somebody great. So I don't envy leadership at all right now, but I do recognize my role with leadership. I'm definitely not at the top, so I have a little bit more reprieve, but I'm in that middle area where people still depend on you to do a lot of this. So I'm more of like the fact checking. Is this the right thing to do? Should we be doing this? What haven't we done already? How can we get more prepared? And that's a tough place to be in right now, just because everything changes constantly and daily. And we have to be up on top of everything from, what's going on in our world around us, and also what's going on internally within our hospital, and keeping our employees safe, just as well as the patients that come in. So it's a lot to take in at one time. And having, so that's why I say I don't envy leadership at all, because whatever aspirations I had previously, like probably 3 months ago, I saw myself progressing a lot faster. And I'm like, well, I can stay here for a little while. Like, I can sit in this position and wait it out.
And Lila, I really think that's the best place to be, even though you're like, I can stay here for a little while, because at the end of the day, I know you're still willing to move forward, but that's the best place to be. A lot of times people want leadership, and they may want it for prestige. They may want it for something that is not really about, like, leadership. In order to be a leader, someone has to be following. So a huge part of your leadership is the people you're leading or what you're leading. And sometimes definitely when you first get into leadership, some of the things that may indicate your leadership maturity is how you handle your role. If it's like everybody do it like because I said, they can do that, but then you have compliance, not commitment. If it's like, yes, I'm king of the hill, that's great, but you still have to navigate, administrate, and handle daily operations of said hill. And so with leadership, like, you don't envy because everybody can see you and everyone's going to nitpick. It doesn't matter what you do. Somebody is going to pick apart something that you're doing at any given time. And so one of the things I really like to share with some leaders is where if communication says seek to understand and not be understood, when you first get into leadership, so often you want people to understand you and just understand where you're coming from. And hey, it's almost like I'm still, what Miss Cherry said the other day, one of you. You're always one of you because we're a team. But people sometimes they just try so hard to be understood, liked, appreciated, instead of just seeking to understand not just the people who are following you, but all the parts, as LaWayne was saying, and having to let go of some of those bad habits, having to let go of some of those hurt feelings for the 17 years that they've been lying on you, saying that you lost the instrument, having to let it go when the resident walked out with the scope and they like sterile processing lost it, And so you have to be aware of their process, right? And I'm asking you guys because you're leaders, you have to be aware of their process, but you have to let go of any wounds or animosity that may have come with it. And that's something that you have to navigate. And for the people who are out there right now,
I think about when my first supervisor position transitioned from a technician that I had been with these employees for 10 years. And I transitioned into a supervisor position. And everybody, I was the first African-American supervisor in that department. And it was some feelings in there. And I remember looking at the workload, and there was so many instruments that needed to be assembled So I thought, you know, get on the table and help assemble some of these instruments. And I was working across from this young lady that was really good on instruments. Demo was never my strongest area. And so I got down to the last 3 instruments through a process of elimination. And so I called her name out and said, can you tell me, you know, what this instrument is? And she took that and said, ha! And they made you the supervisor. And so it was at that point, back to my book, Don't Let Them See You Sweat. I said, you know, you're right. My job is not to know every instrument, but to make sure that all the instruments get put up. So I'm gonna put this over to you and let you finish this set, and I'm gonna go be helpful somewhere else. And you know, everybody was looking at that point like, what's she gonna do? What's she gonna say? But I supervised. I said my job is to make sure the instruments get put up. But gave her the set and kept moving. So you know, we just have to know when to hold, when to roll, and yeah.
You are so right, and I love that story. It comes down to knowing our sterile processing or leadership IQ, right?
Mm-hmm.
We gotta know what we're good at, what we're not. I was sort of, and I hear the story a lot. You ask the leaders around the country, how did you end up in sterile processing? There was an opening. I was there by mistake. There was a void. There was never a path forwards. Meaning this. Years 1 through 5, you'll be a technician. Years 5 through 8, you'll get your role as a lead worker. Year 8.5 through 9, if a supervisor position is open up, we're going to give you that shot. There's a leadership spot. Never happens like that. In my case, I was a clinical manager at at the largest dental school in the country. I was only a technician for 2 years before I got transferred out. So this particular department was going through some major transitions. And I was simply asked a question about leadership. Can you do in SPD what you did for finances in the clinic? You know, 18 years old, sure, I can do it. Got down there, and I got the world handed to me on a platter in a language I didn't understand. You know, and I said, never again will I take any position without doing my homework. Right. So this is what the healthcare industry needs to do now. Do your homework. You have so much talent within your department. Some are being appreciated. I hear from techs every day. They love where they work. Everyone, like the show Cheers, when you want to go someplace where everyone knows your name, everyone knows everyone's name. Everyone loves and cherishes your commitment. But then you have the other side of that is where for a technician, it just becomes a job. You know, you're in there watching the clock. You can't wait until lunch. You can't wait until the huddle, because the huddle time comes. You don't have to deal with your coworker. So I still have to say, get yourself a mentor. You know, speak to some of your peers, and and get some stories to tell, because these stories are going to resonate with someone else watching our experiences.
And something that Mr. Perkins touched on that I completely agree is do your homework. It seems like a lot, and not only in SPD field, but everywhere you go, there's a lot of bosses and not enough leaders. And that's something that I had to overcome when I was younger also. I was 20 years old and one of the biggest trauma centers in New York City, the youngest supervisor. And, you know, they gave me a supervisor position. I was feeling myself. I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing, this and that. And you need to have that humility to know that there's much more for you to learn, that you know absolutely nothing. And at that point, I didn't know how to be a leader yet. I knew what needed to get done in the department, how to do it, but I didn't know how to lead my team yet. And it's one thing that I remember that stuck with me forever. And it's all about how you're being perceived also by your team. So if your team is not perceiving you in a way that of a leader and more of a boss, you're not going to have that respect. And that's something that you want. And I remember this gentleman came back from breaking down boxes and his scrubs were dirty. And I'm like, oh, what's that on your shirt? He said, it's called work. And I'm like, wow. But it stuck with me. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. What can I do more now to feel, to make it be seen that I am part of the trenches? And after that, I rolled up my sleeves, got into the trenches constantly. I never felt that a title or a position was something that, you know, was that I earned, but it's more that I gain from like the respect of my peers and from my leaders. So you become a leader. Don't stay stagnant as a boss, and do your homework.
Come out of that office. Come out of that office. I see so many leaders are people that have been there forever. Just sit in their office. Come out of that office.
Yes,
Come
yes.
out of the office.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, we always share, right, that after we transition and we're long gone, no one's gonna remember how well you put together that Synthes tray, how great you were on that vascular set, how amazing you pill pouched. They're gonna remember if you were a gentle, humble, kind human being, or if you were an a-hole, right?
Yes.
So those are your options. You know, how are you? What legacy are you going to leave behind? And we're legacy building every day. You know, every day. So yes, I love that. Come out of the office and get into the trenches. Great story.
Yeah. Also, I was just gonna say, know who you're leading, because if you don't know who you're leading, you can't effectively, speak on their behalf when you're that with opportunity to go to the upline. How do you know what they need? And I found it very shocking. One time we had like an interim director, and the interim director did not know that there were some lead techs that actually had degrees and had a couple more certifications. And it was just kind of shocking that they didn't know that information. And one of the lead techs kind of took offense. It was like, you don't even know your people. And you're our interim director right now. And it kind of just pulled him into his moment where he needed to have a moment to say, you know what, I need to get down and know this team a little bit more.
Right.
How can I come in and really guide them and lead them? So you have to know who you're leading to. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Good point.
Wendy says lead by example. I think I heard Mr. Perkins say that. I think I've heard everybody say that.
Go ahead. I'm off the camera for a second.
Okay. I think I've heard everyone say that a few times, like just lead by example, let them see you, be out front. What I'd like for us to talk about just for a second here is even in leading by example, I do kind of play devil's advocate sometimes, because we are a nation, and some of the cultures and practices and processes, even colloquialisms, the way people speak, are different as you go from Georgia to New York City, to Kansas City, to Paris, Texas, to San Francisco, to Seattle. And so in leading by example, when it comes to like the process, you guys have that, some of the leaders have that on lock. They know these processes. What are ways they can lead by example that are soft skills? No one teaches you the soft skills. And that's why people who are so happy, I'm a lead, I'm a supervisor, are ready to quit in 6 months, because they're like, dude, listen to me, they keep blaming me. They gonna throw me under, and if you don't have support, which is what we're talking about, you're gonna be left with your thoughts and the tools that you already did not have. And so what are some ways that you can lead by example, not based on process, but like soft skills, communication, practices? Do you shake someone's hand? Maybe you're used to calling everyone hun, but maybe that's offensive to some people. Do you think they should get over it, or is the onus on you to adjust? So we're talking two leaders. I know I may be preaching to the choir here, but how can we help our field? Because there are leaders out there who are kind of butchering it sometimes. We do.
I think this is a good one for Karen to lead off on. In fact, she wrote a whole book about it. So Karen, CSPD management, what should I do?
It's like Lila said. She said, know who you're leading. And I always say, know your audience. And so because the different, respect, embrace the different cultures. And one of the things that I said I typically do, I said this the other day, is when it is something I do, not even typically, just something I do. Whenever I have a new group, I'm calling them in one by one. I want to get to know who you are. What challenges have you had? And then someone might say, well, they're making me work on Sundays and with my culture, my religion. And so it's not letting them manipulate you, not letting them manipulate the system, but really understanding if this is something that you can help them with. And where Sharon, where you said hun is funny because I had an employee that I had to talk to one time because staff were complaining about her calling him hun. And she says, well, I love to be called hun. So I had to let her know it's not about what how you want to be treated, but it's how that individual wants to be treated. So with that being said, as you get to know your staff, then you will have that opportunity to start understanding what it is that they appreciate, what it is that rubs them wrong, and you just work with them. And some things you just have to come to a compromise on. But if you get to know your staff, truly get to understand your staff, spend time with them, those soft skills, as you said, it's easy enough to get them to follow you because you're respecting their needs, and in return, you typically get that respect back.
Absolutely. And something that James Barber said, and that I always try to tell everyone is know your team. And once you, being a consultant and being someone that's been in many facilities to help streamline processes, you realize that, even within New York City, there's different cultures and different environments within the workplace that you have to be mindful about. And then when you're going to other states, there's different types of language that you have to use also. It could mean one thing in one place and then another thing in another place. But that's why once you step foot into that department, listen, just stay, keep your ears open, see how the flow is going naturally, see what is needed, where things are bottlenecking. Don't just start, shooting from the hip just because and I said this before, just because one thing worked in one place doesn't mean it's going to work at another place. And another point is also that what Mr. Perkins stated is find yourself a mentor. Sometimes, you could do a self-inventory of, what you feel like you're doing and what you're not doing, what you could work on. But when you have someone else looking in and giving you feedback, it's such great help. Actually, Mr. Perkins was one of my mentors when I started at NYU, and it was just amazing. It was spectacular. I dedicated my NYU graduation to him because one of the greatest things he taught me is business is never personal, and learn how to get that thick skin, because something that's hard, especially in SPD, is when you have, doctors, nurses getting mad at you, you have to build that thick skin. You can't take things personally, and that person that was screaming at you one day is going to be needing your help the next day. So business is never personal. I always imagine there's a hook at the exit of my facility, and then once I step out, that hook grabs all my stresses, all the problems of that day, and it stays there. I don't bring it home, and I don't bring it back to work the next day. The next day I start fresh on a clean slate with everyone.
Yeah.
All right. Hey everyone, we're gonna take a short break, look at some crunchy rollers. I encourage everyone to eat healthy as we are keeping our immunity up. And this is just a little snack that is a healthy snack. And when we come back, we're going to do hot seat questions. Okay, so we've been talking and it's been a nice leisurely conversation about leadership. These will be hot seat questions about leadership. And I don't even know who's going to get what, but I think I'll ring a bell at about 70 seconds. So you just answer, and there's no right answers, there's no wrong answers, but we're just sharing so that other people can see how you grow in leadership. And sometimes leadership is simply being visible and being willing to be visible. We'll be right back with Knowledge and Nonsense.
Thank you. I need one.
All right, let's go. Hot seat question. Who's down to go first?
I'm game.
All right, you're game. Leadership in social media. Are your resumes, social media, and your conversation congruent? You're a leader. You're the supervisor. You are the leader. Does your social media, does your resume reflect the leader that you believe you are?
No.
If it doesn't, it should. Right?
It just doesn't. I don't. Someone told me a long time ago that you need to have a downside and have a off switch, and so I definitely don't think that they add up together. But I'm very active in certain groups, so there's sterile processing groups that I'm active on, and I try to solicit information and put information out there that I think is helpful for people. But ideally, my social media tends to be a little dry. I'm not on there often, and I don't tend to put as much information pertaining to my professional business out there on my personal page. It's pretty much just family and, my children.
No.
So.
No.
Ding, ding, ding. I need a rebuttal.
I got one. Unfortunately, there are blurred lines. Right? If you're on Facebook ranting about politics and you're going in about whatever the case was, the local mayor, and you come back to work the next day and don't think you ruffled some feathers because of something you chose to do on your off time, let me tell you, the lines are blurred. Case in point, I was a manager in West Virginia. Didn't mean to offend anyone by some of the music I like. But when I saw new pinstripes on my car, I knew I offended someone. So I had to clear up those lines and make sure whatever you represent publicly, you must represent privately or be closely aligned.
All right, that is up. Thank you, Lila, for your perspective. Dwayne, for your perspective. I do want to go on record as saying you want your things to be congruent. If you don't want whatever you put on social media, it can get out, whether it's private or not. You do want your things to be congruent because the higher you go up, the more visibility you have, and people reach way back. I'm still waiting. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm still waiting on something from 10, 12, 15 years ago to come up, and then they try to assign it to you now. The higher you go up in leadership, the more visible you are. And whenever you're not on the same plane as other people, it has nothing to do with you personally. It's something different. So people are going to look up and they're going to nitpick what you have. Okay. Next thing, email etiquette. Email etiquette. Tell me about it, Miss Cherry. What do you need to know in leadership with email etiquette?
I would say as far as email etiquette, make sure you don't bold anything. Mm-hmm. And actually, I say that should be the third thing. Initially, try to go speak to someone when possible. Then try to call them if they aren't available. Then go with the email or do the email with the follow-up if it's something that you just want to make sure that they remember, or if you need to, they say, cover your behind. But yeah, soft tone. Read it a couple of times before you send it out. If you are upset about a situation, don't send that email out until the end of the day, because that will have given you time to have calm down, think about what you're going to say, and if need be, send it to someone else to proof it before you send it. So you make sure that you have a professional email when you hit send.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I was going to touch on also. Don't send an email when you're emotionally driven or riled up, because it's quick just to get on the keyboard and start, venting all your feelings and stuff like that. And be mindful of like the grammar you're using and the punctuation. I've seen too many times of a whole email in cap locks. I'm like, are you screaming at me, or are you just telling me how was my day? And it was just a normal email, but that cap locks could be deadly sometimes. And always be mindful of who you're addressing to. Hi, Miss Sherry, Dr. Mr. Perkins, et cetera, and just format it in a way that it's easily to digest. You don't want to put your whole life story. That's something I have to be mindful, because I'm all about data. So I'm quick to put every single key point and data I came across in my email. I'm like, I have to trim this completely down. So be mindful of all that stuff.
If you are a leader, let me do this one. If you are a leader and if somebody tells you, hey, we're going to build a house, and you're like, let's build it, and you start gathering materials immediately, you're probably a leader that's quick to action. It doesn't mean everyone on your team is going to be quick to action. Mm-hmm. So if you send out an email and someone sends you an email back, with 4, 5, or 6 questions, you may feel like, why are they questioning me? I'm the boss. Why are they just, I said what we're going to do. What didn't they understand? You know, some people just like to measure twice and cut once. Some people like to measure 4 times to be sure they only cut once. And so with emails, know too that sometimes when people ask you questions or send an email back to clarify several things, that's a personality thing that has nothing to do with challenging your authority, that has nothing to do with trying to slow you down or, you know, anything like that. So I just wanted to share that.
Good point.
Last thing, let me get Miss Lila in here.
Sure.
Lila, as a leader, how do you use your words?
Ooh, I try to use my words as best as I can to deliver a clear message. I think that sometimes things can be very confusing and a lot's going on. So I always try to make sure I'm clear, and I do try to be empathetic with the team. You know, I know what it is. I've been there with them, whether it's on the line currently or, you know, 10 years ago, but I've been there. So I know what the situations are and what can arise and what can be going on. So I try to make sure that I just, whenever I deliver a message, it's just very clear. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. You know, I try to answer all the questions, W's, you know, who, what, when, where, why, so that I can leave everything as clear as possible. And then, you know, and I'll do open everything up for questions afterwards. You know, my word is not the end all be all of everything. I have a boss too, so I know what it is to have to, you know, respond to someone's actions. But I try my best to make sure I'm clear as possible when I'm speaking to my team.
All right, this is the last question, and I'm going to actually ask it to everyone, but in a different way. We're going to do body language, and then I'm going to let you all say whatever you need to say. But thanks so much for this. I do have one more question before I do this, because we're talking about leadership. How many people here have been embarrassed at any given time in your life? Okay, my hand is up, right? How many of us are still here?
All of us.
Oh, the embarrassment.
Sometimes the fear of embarrassment keeps people from saying a great solution, a great idea. You've been doing what you're doing for a while, growing leadership, and don't be so afraid of being embarrassed or getting a little egg on your face that you stunt your own growth. All right, so body language. Danny, body language. If all I had to know was, if the only thing I could communicate with you with was your body language, how would you position yourself as you're talking to me about being empathetic? If you're trying to be empathetic and I'm going through a hard time.
Well, one of the things I always revert to back when considering body language is this TED Talk, and I suggest everyone look at it. Whether you're already in the field or doing interviews, it's a fantastic TED Talk. It's called "Don't Fake It Till You Make It, Fake It Till You Become It" by Amy Cuddy, and she speaks about body language. How she asked the whole audience, and I asked everyone that's watching right now, take a self-assessment of how your body language is right now. Are you slunched over? Are you holding your chest out high? And she goes on and demonstrates scientific data that people that, you know, do these power poses, like hands on the hips, the Wonder Woman, stretch outside, head high, they boost the testosterone in your body, and, you know, they have you building this confidence. And the people with lower body language that are closing themselves up not only are being perceived with less confident, but they're also activating something called cortisol, which is the stress hormone within your body. So the way you position your body is so important, not only in a perceptive manner, but also within chemically within your body. So yeah.
That's good. This is my power pose right here. When I'm stressed, right here, 2 minutes. All right. Lawayne, when you want to get commitment and lead your team, oh no, you don't get empathy. It's another one for you. You were waiting for it.
Let's get it.
You want to lead your team. You want to instill confidence in your team. Like even as Lila was saying, who would want to be a leader right now? Because what is this we're in? But you still have to rally your troops and you need them to follow you. What if you're telling us about it, what's your body language there?
Well, one, I think body language is regionalized, right? If I'm on the East Coast, I tend to talk more with my hands because I tend to paint the picture. I gotta like I'm popping, break it all the way down. I'm on the West Coast. I don't want to be too intimidating, so I might keep my hands a little more relaxed, open palm. But to lead the team is simply reminding them and inspiring them who they are and what they're here to do. One technique that I always and still do, I would tell myself and my team, it's like watching a good movie. And you're so engulfed in the movie that when the main character jumps or the theme music changes, you jump, right? Don't jump. You know, you got to remind yourself, I'm only watching this movie. I'm not a part of it. And by doing that, you self-detach and hold your form and in your position.
I like that, detach. I'm going to use that because you would stay objective in that way. Thank you. I've never heard that before. Oh, I don't know. Let me do Karen and Lila. I'm looking at Lila's body language right now. Karen has body language that says, I'm ready. Bring it on. Yeah. I think, see how she's sitting back? She's like, let's do it. I've been here before. Lila's like, what is she going to ask me? Because your team looks at your body language too, you know, and sometimes that's part of that, like how you become it. Karen says, wow. Karen says, wow on that. That was good. One of our viewers is saying, wow. So body language, let's see. Danny, think of a situation that requires body language.
Negotiation. When you're negotiating anything, you need your body language. You know, you have to make sure that you know what you want. Don't let the other person that's talking to you pressure you into something that you are not happy with or something that you don't want to accept. You know, have that confidence. You know, another thing that my mentor, Lorraine Perkins, taught me was those awkward pauses. Me, before that moment, I had to fill in that void that oh, it's silence. I need to say something. And sometimes I would always say something that I didn't want to say, but let that awkward pause linger right there, and they will fill in the void for you. They'll fill in. Always.
All right, that's good. Ding, ding, ding.
I was doing my negotiation.
Okay.
I'm revealing your
That's your body language while you're negotiating. Yes, because your body language is a part of the negotiation, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep a poker face on while I'm negotiating.
All right. How about our hands in the negotiation?
My hands are down in my lap right now because I'm negotiating, listening to where we are, and then when I feel that I need to come in, I'm coming in. And this is how we're gonna do this.
Lean in, and then sit back and wait on the response.
Exactly.
Feel the awkward pause.
But something you should also be mindful of is the other person's body language too. If someone's with their arm crossed and you feel they're not being receptive to what you're saying, you're going to try to open them up first. You know, listen to what
That's why I'm sitting back listening. Your arms were folded, and I'm
exactly. You just try to make them more receptive to what you're saying, and then start going with the negotiation.
I just want to. Let me just throw this out there. I want to share this in negotiation. Yes, exactly what everyone is saying. But and it sounds like we're just talking about body language. Listen, Sterile Processing Nation, SPD Nation, listen. Everything we talk about on here, even if it's something in the community, it's something you can use, and we want to empower. We want to share tools with everyone as we are raising the bar all the way around in sterile processing. Not just with compliance, not just with regulatory guidelines, leadership, everything. We want to be sure that we're empowering. This is to add value. And so as you move up, you know, you may start having to negotiate. And every negotiation is not just a traveler contract or trying to get an extra 25% in this. You know, you can negotiate outside of just pay. There are perks, there are leadership programs. And so you want to know how to sit. You want to be able to be comfortable in those pauses. You want to know that you don't have to respond, and every negotiation isn't like I won, they didn't. It can be win-win. You can listen in negotiation to even hear what the other party has need of and place yourself in that. So I just wanted to share that because I know we're all, you know, Ms. Cherry owns company, Dwayne, he's president of CS Assist. Like, we're all at different levels growing in this thing of body language. And so I just want us to know how body language complements us. And I want to be sure that it doesn't contradict us. I want to be sure our body is not contradicting what we're saying. And again, with negotiation, even if someone's arms are folded sometime, if you're going into HR, and there's some things you want to ask for, or they're offering you a position, their arms may be folded because maybe they know body language, and maybe that's a tool that they use to kind of throw you off. And then you start fiddling with your fingers, and then you start shifting in your chair because you want them to like you. But so listen, look at their body language, maybe try to open them up, but also be aware of where you are sitting as you negotiate. I didn't mean to go into all that rant, that tangent right there, but these are all tools that we use in sterile processing. And listen. We're going to share them with you because we want you to succeed all the way around holistically.
Right. Communication is important also within SPD, is because how a doctor's going to walk into your office and be like, I need this tray, I need 6 of them, or else I can't perform my surgeries. Now we're going to start a negotiation. It's like, my budget doesn't allow these 6 trays. I could probably give you 2. So now let's work something out. So we go with this back and forth. But if you cower and you just like, okay, now you're putting yourself in a very not great spot with your boss because you just approved $6 million trays and you don't have the budget for it. So body language and negotiation tactics, knowing a good fair amount of it is so important in SPD, again, because you're dealing with so many different personalities and characters and even departments. So it's great. It's a great tool to have under your belt.
It's so many life skills that you can take away in addition to body language. Earn and learn who you are, right? Once you earn and learn who you are, you begin to control the energies around you. Right? I'm not talking about this spacey magic. If you begin to project an outcome and you go into those meetings or those conversations with already a goal in mind that you know you can achieve, you can get it. As a person thinking, so shall it be. So SPD, you deal with so much every day, so many different levels of education, so many different levels of religion, of upbringing. You are such a special group of people, and you need to be told this more. But don't leave all your experiences at home. Bring them to work with you. That's what makes us great. Bring your whole being with you in order to govern your day to day.
Absolutely.
That's really good. Lida, did you have anything you want to say about body language?
I think we touched on all of it, except for the only thing that I try to make sure I do to, give eye contact, make sure that people understand that I'm listening to listen. I'm trying to understand everything that's going on, not just listening to speak. So I'm trying to pay attention and look on those other cues that are going on, because there's a lot sometimes that can be going on when you're trying to have a conversation with someone in the department. We've all been there. It's loud. There's machines going off. There's people ringing the bells or whatever's going on, people blowing air into instruments, and someone's trying to give you some important information about what that stat case was and what they needed right away, and the loaners they can't find. So listening clearly and trying to listen to understand every piece is going on before you give a response, I think is very key. And that's body language too. Giving someone that eye contact and paying attention to what they're saying, and also being aware and cognizant of everything around you at the same time.
That was good.
Excellent. I just want to say thank you all so much for tonight.
Thank you.
It's always good to have leadership conversations just kind of go. And even as we were talking about support, when we're giving support to the people who report to us and to our peers and our colleagues, even our upline, our body language can indicate that support as well. Just so you know, remain open. Even if you're tense and you're pressed for time, then think about it. Make a conscious decision to think about the pace of your words. If you can think about the pace of your words, what happens is you'll begin to bring others, you can help someone else calm down. You can diffuse a conversation. If the doctor or the nurse is screaming at you, here's a free tip. If they're screaming at you on the phone, you talk lower. What happens is they have to get quiet to begin to hear you. Now, don't go so quiet they can't hear you, but you just talk lower and make sure your voice stays calm and paced, and that will actually affect that entire conversation, and it'll keep you from matching their energy to where it's an argument or it's oppositional. Again, thank you guys so much. Just to be clear, we have Karen Cherry, owner, president of Sips Consults and KC's Properties. We have Danny Vasquez, SPD extraordinaire, dynamic consultant, dynamic leader, dynamic manager. LaWayne Perkins, president of CS Assist. sharing his time. Thanks so much for just sharing this information. And Lila Price, we know, dynamic educator, advocate for all things SPD, especially the people. You know, Lila shares her time. She does different things to help make sure everyone has access to things that will help them grow. And myself, Sharon Combs with UCDI Leadership, a subsidiary of Do Something Daily LLC. And we just wanted to say thank you for what you do in sterile processing and let you know, continue to grow. This field is wide open. Regardless of what you may have thought of, regardless of how it may have been portrayed 15, 20 years ago, there is growth in this field. It's wide open. And if you will lean in, you will be able to increase your influence and your impact, not just in this field, but even externally too. So yeah, anything else, guys, before we go away?
Nothing else. Thank you very much, everyone.
You're doing what you do. We appreciate you.
Yes, we do. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Y'all have a great one.
Likewise. Have a great night.
Bye.